This is changing a rear tire on an original Preschool or canine bunch bike. Tim's going to walk you through it, first showing you what tools are needed, and then we'll walk you through the process.
So first thing is to get the rear end off the ground using a jack stand here, placed under the frame by the chain stays. So with that rear wheel elevated, first thing is to remove the rear derailleur.
Can you first say what are all tools here so we can get those?
So we have a triple hex wrench. You only need the 5 mil on this, so you can use any 5 mil hex wrench. We'll have clippers to cut the zip tie that we need to cut. 19 mil wrench and a tire lever for removing the tire.
And a zip tie.
And a zip tie for reattaching the wires. So we're going to remove the rear derailleur using the 5 mil hex wrench. And since this is got a spring and it's got tension on it, I typically just hold on to it. While I do that, you're going to hear a little click in a second, which is just the screw in the back which adjusts the angle of the derailleur. Once we get that off, you can just kind of let it hang. I'm going to cut the zip tie that's on the frame here. Pretty good. Get that out of there. The motor on the rear wheel has a wire that connects it to the control panel in the back. We need to separate the wire like that. I'll let that hang down. We're going to remove the rubber caps over the axle nuts. And then with the 19 mil wrench, just loosen the nuts. The non-dry side may be a little harder to get done. These tend to be a little tighter out of the box. There you go. And then just gonna wiggle the tire out, the dropouts. Remove the chain from the cassette. Slide the wheel out. Then we'll take tire lever. Advise using a plastic tire lever and not like a metal screwdriver or anything like that. Just something that won't puncture a tube. And a little more here.
He's having to make the tire flat because this was not a flat tire.
So typically my method is I'll put the lever under the tire, and I always, for some reason, I always start on the opposite side from the valve stem. And then with that underneath, you're pulling the bead of the tire over the rim. Just take it all the way around. And you can leave the other side on the flat tube. You just pull it up. And then you can just kind of pull back on the side of the tire that you took off the rim. And pull the tube out. Then with it still on, halfway on the rim, we take the the new tube, which if it's completely flat, there's no air at all, pump it up a little bit just to give it the circular shape, and we'll just kind of do an opposite of what we did, taking it off. I'm going to pull back on that tire, insert the valve through the hole in the rim, and pull the tire back over. And this side came off, but there we go. And I just installed the tube all the way around.
And what size tube is that?
This is a 24. Specifically, this tire is a 24 by 2, so
okay.
The tubes tend to have variable sizes, so anything that will fit a 2, like it could be like a 1.5 to 2.1 or something like that, but as long as it's the appropriate size, then you can put the tube in and make that work. And then when I'm putting the tire back on, I start from where the valve stem is, and I just push the bead over the rim. Until it's on all the way around. And then just to make sure that I don't end up getting a pinch flat or any kind of flat from the tube not being properly installed, I go around and I push the bead in, and I look to see if the tube is sticking out from under the bead at all. And as long as it's not doing that, that means it's fully inside of the tire. And then when it inflates, it'll just push the bead against the rim, and that will be all good. So in putting the wheel back on, you see we have 3 things on each side of the axle here. We have the nut, we have a washer, and then we have a specific washer for the inside. So this one goes inside the frame, and the little tab there is meant to line up with the dropout on the rear of the frame. So you just want to make sure that that's flush with the side of the axle that it's supposed to be up against, and then so with the deflated, the tire's still deflated, we'll chain back over the cassette. We have that tab ready to line up again with the slots and the dropout. And we're going to try to keep an eye on the disc rotor on this side to make sure that it's going to slide into the opening between the pads as we start to pull the tire back on.
So yeah, so getting the disc right in there.
Now it might even be convenient in some cases to actually take the whole caliper off. You can actually remove these 2 bolts, take the disc brake caliper off there, so that you can just slide the tire back on and then reattach with these 2 bolts. That's an option if getting it lined up is a little confusing or just difficult. And then while holding the tire, the wheel back tight, making sure that it's all the way in, and hand tighten the nut. Take our 19 mil, tighten each bolt, each nut. So tire now back on the frame. We're going to inflate the tire to 55 psi.
And you can use any normal bike tire pump at home, as long as it has a Schrader valve attachment, and preferably has a pressure gauge as well, so you can get it to the 55 psi.
Replace our valve stem cap. Now we'll reattach the rear derailleur. This is something we certainly don't want to get a cross thread thing happening here. So typically when I'm reattaching the derailleur, I'll kind of get the attachment part into the hanger. I'll just kind of turn it backwards until I feel like a little click that tells me that the threads aren't going to cross when I start turning.
So if it feels really hard to turn, you probably should not force it. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And also you're going to want to pull back a little bit because of the adjustment screw here. It's likely that if you just put it straight on, that this will hit the frame, so you want to kind of pull back, make sure there's some clearance. Get it tight, and then let it go. And put the little rubber caps back over the axle nuts. And spin the wheel. Make sure that the brake shouldn't be rubbing. If it wasn't rubbing before I took the wheel off, it shouldn't be rubbing when I put the wheel back on. Otherwise that might mean the wheel's a little out of alignment. But here, it's fine, there's no brake rub. To reconnect the motor wire, you're going to look for a very small arrow that's on the this side of the wire, and then match it up with the arrow on this side of the wire. Push them together, and then the zip tie, feed that through the little tab on the frame. We'll get that around the derailleur cable and the motor wire, keep them tight to the frame, and then clipping the zip tie so we don't have a unsightly little tail of the zip tie hanging out. And there you go.